All right, gang, here we are out here, beautiful Alabama. It is May, and that means a few things. Largemouth, spotted bass, smallmouth were just getting done spawning. The shad are starting to spawn. Summer's on the way, but these fish want to feed up heavily before that actually gets here. And so one of the things I really like doing is fishing topwater around places like seawalls, rocks, grass. These are likely areas where shad will be spawning. It's a trip how Mother Nature works. It's like the bass has spent all this time exerting all this energy having those eggs, and then they don't even have to go anywhere, and then the food source comes to them. So that's kind of how nature works. It's kind of cool, it takes care of itself. But as soon as you get done with the bass spawn, you got the shad spawn. So you want to start looking at water temps in the high 60s, 68, up to about 75. And that's a really telltale sign of when those bait fish are up there spawning. So one of the reasons I really like a popper, obviously it's a very realistic looking bait. The profile is perfect for these threadfin shad that these bass are feeding on. And then there's something about that pop, pop, pause, and that bait just hovering and hanging out in that strike zone right above those bass head. They just cannot stand for it to sit there. Most often your strikes will occur when that bait's sitting completely still, you're not moving it whatsoever. You know, the popper is just one of them baits, man. It's been around forever. And I think anglers just kind of overlook it. Everyone loves to throw topwater, but a popper is such a great lure, but it just doesn't get the credit, I don't think. I mean, there's so many different situations where a popper is really an excellent choice. And I think it's almost like a brand new bait. I'm always trying out that old school stuff and kind of reintroducing it to these bass that never seen it before. It's very important to know the type of areas shad like to spawn on. And you'll see right behind me, I have a seawall. But this seawall in particular is different from a lot of the others. It's a wooden seawall. It's kind of old. It has a lot of algae growing on it. Timber in the water that's, you know, wood that they use to build these posts, but they're very old and breaking down. Full of algae. Those shad then go to these places. Obviously they spawn, but then they kind of hang out to feed as well. And you got big spots and largemouth up there early in the morning getting those easy meals. You really want to get that bait absolutely as close to that bank as possible, or as close to that seawall as possible. The strike zone can vary. They'll come off that seawall and strike this bait. But a lot of times, if possible, you want to try to parallel if you can, but get that bait right up there on that absolute bank, right where that seawall meets the water. That's going to be your best chance at getting one of those bass to come up. And so the shad spawn doesn't last. Really and truly they spawn at nighttime. And what happens is we catch the residual fish that are still up there spawning first thing in the morning. This bite is usually over with by 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. On cloudier days, it may prolong just a little bit longer, but it's not a long bite. So you have to get out there, get after them early, and look to get most of your best bites in the first hour of the day. All right, guys, here we go. I'm getting out of here now. I want to chase that shade. The shade is going to prolong that topwater bite. It's going to prolong that shad spawn a little bit. So we're actually going to get out of here, make a quick run, get on some more seawalls, but we're going to be in the shade. That's a key figure right there. We just pulled up to our next spot. As you can see, even I'm shaded here. The sun's still back behind these trees. We're back on another seawall, have a little bit of grass mixed in. All this is great spawning habitat for the shad. So, all right, guys, so here it is, a popper, the one I was throwing this morning. You know, and it's like most poppers. It has 2 standard treble hooks. I always swap the hooks out, and I put number 4 round bends on these right here. And something that a lot of guys don't do, poppers don't always come with feathered treble hooks. I love to put a feathered treble hook on the back right here. I feel like on the paws, which is when most of the bites come, the feather just adds a little extra action while that thing's sitting, has a little mylar mixed in there, a little flash, helps the fish find it, locate it, and eventually eat the bait. This one has some decent weight to it, so I can cast it in very tight corners, which is important. And then it has that rattle in it. So every time I pop that bait, almost like a rattle trap, it has several beads in there, and it just gives a little more noise, allows those fish to kind of locate it a little bit better. But very basic, very simple, nothing special, but it catches them. What a blow up, man. What a blow up. What a blow up. And that's a good one. And that is a good one. What a blow up, dude. That's a good fish. Big spotted bass. Big old Coosa. Get up here. Wow, there we go. Look at that. That's what you want to see. This is a big old shad spawn eater right here. Coosa River spot. Gorgeous fish. Over 3 pounds. Tail's bleeding a little bit. So she's just getting back right, likely to have been spawning. And that's just a gorgeous fish. All right, guys, you guys saw as I caught that fish there, I had a herring go right by me in the process of me reeling that fish in. And again, that's one of those telltale signs that you want to be looking for when you're fishing and looking for that shad spawn. He's up here early, he's feeding on those shad, and those bass are not going to be far behind. And that's exactly what went down right then. Get up here. Wow, there we go. Look at that. When you see those fish feeding birds just lined up on the bank, strong indication shad are spawning. All right, guys, let's talk setup on this here. I'm using a favorite 7-foot medium action absolute bait casting rod. I love the action on this because it's important to have a rod that is not too stiff whenever you're throwing treble hook baits. Can't stress that enough. Whether it's a jerk bait, a crank bait, topwater, doesn't matter. You need something that has a little bit of play in it. But I am throwing braid. But what you'll notice is I have about an 8-inch fluorocarbon leader. Now what that allows me to do is it keeps that line from getting wrapped in that front treble hook, okay? So on slack line like this here, you can see how that fluorocarbon sticks straight out off that bait. And that allows me to walk that bait side to side or even just popping it without the fear of getting tangled in that front treble hook. There's nothing worse than making a great cast and then you realize that braided line's wrapped around that front treble hook and you've ruined that cast. You gotta reel it in. You've already showed that fish your bait. You're not gonna get that bite. So short piece of fluorocarbon there. I'm throwing this on 40-pound Seaguar smackdown braid, and then I'm tying an FG knot to, again, that 8-inch piece of fluorocarbon, and that's 20-pound fluorocarbon. I have a Johnny Morris Signature Series reel again. 6:8 is the gear ratio here. All my topwater walking style baits and my popper, I'll throw in this exact same setup. We already weren't seeing a ton of shad. There were a few flickering around as well. We started with the popper, but once that sun gets up, I'm talking 8:30, 9 o'clock, it starts shining down on you. You can about put this bad boy up and it's time to move on to something else. So keep that in mind during the shad spawn. Hour, 2 hour max window. Fish it, fish hard, fish efficient, be quick, get out of there, move on to something else. You know, I think the ideal time for that shad spawn is kind of beyond us. So we're gonna move on to some other things. But next time you guys are out and it's May, June-ish, that water temp starts to hover in that high 60s to low 70s, be on the lookout for a shad spawn. And don't forget about the old tried and true popper. It's been catching them since they ever introduced it to the game. Still catches them today. So you guys, I'll check you on the next one.